Everybody.
Hi, welcome to Initiation into Mystery. Oh,
Hi, everybody.
hi, welcome to Initiation into Mystery on the Way of the Rose. Tonight we're going to be talking about the fifth joyous mystery, a really rich mystery, like they all are, the finding at the temple.
Yeah.
And, and I posted. I know it may take a few people a while to get on, just because we had some technical difficulties with Facebook getting us set and going. So we'll sort of blab for a few minutes while everybody gets signed on and get started. Please feel free while we're talking to post your questions, your comments. We're happy to respond to anything that you say while we're talking. So feel free to chime in while we're talking.
Yeah.
So let me talk about the finding a little bit, because it's a really interesting mystery. It is both a joyous mystery in the regular traditional rosary, and it is also fascinatingly considered one of the
No. Well, it is the loss of Jerusalem. That's
yeah
right.
yeah
You're
yeah yeah
right.
yeah
You're
yeah
right.
the
It's one of the
seven joys
sorrowful.
is considered one of the seven joys of Mary. And if you pray the Franciscan crown, you pray the finding at the temple as one of the seven joys of Mary. However, if you pray the seven sorrows of Mary, you pray the loss at the temple.
Yeah, the loss in Jerusalem. That's right. It's one of this is one of the few mysteries that is both a mystery of the regular 15-decade rosary and the rosary of the second seven joys and the rosary of the seven
It's a
sorrows.
crossover
Yeah.
mystery,
Yeah.
really rich. There's a lot going on here. So let's just talk about, we've talked about the kind of three-step process for working with the
Yeah.
mysteries. What's happening in them, what's happening at a kind of meta symbolic level, and then how do we bring our own imagination and
Yeah.
intuition and personal
Yeah.
story into them, and how do we
Yeah.
let them kind of ignite and
Right.
explain our own
Right.
story.
Yeah. So what's happening in this mystery is, if we look at it from a traditional Jewish point of view, basically Jesus is, it's almost like he's going for his bar mitzvah. It's a rite of initiation. He's going to his Passover ceremony in Jerusalem. He's traveling with his whole family to get there. They get to the city. They observe the Passover. The rituals are performed, and then it's time for the family to leave, and they're in a huge band. They're traveling with all kinds of families from Nazareth, cousins, brothers, sisters, everybody.
Friends,
Yeah,
big
friends,
group.
big group. And they leave and they assume that Jesus is with his friends and they're all traveling together. Everybody's sort of watching everybody else's kid. Then at a certain point, somebody says to Mary and Joseph, "Where's Jesus?" And they say, "Well, he's back there." And they say, "No, he's not." They go, "Oh my gosh." So they're already a day out when this happens. They go back and they search for him for 2 more days. They can't find him anywhere.
And that 3 days that he's missing,
Yeah,
that he's not with them, of course, is a kind of foreshadowing of the 3 days between the crucifixion and the
that's
resurrection.
right. That's right.
Um, this is certainly a mystery, though, that for any parent who's ever had a
Yeah.
teenager is like
Or a little kid or a
it,
12 year. He's like 12 years
it's
old.
the
So he's,
quintessential
yeah.
adolescent mystery. Where are they?
Where's Jesus?
I cannot find them. And
Yeah.
so they look and look, and Mary finds Jesus finally in the temple itself. And he's talking with all the rabbis and he's teaching them, and they are astounded at his learning and his eloquence and his wisdom. And
Right.
that's often, if you hear traditional Catholics talking about this mystery, the point of the mystery. Look at Jesus already at 12 years old.
That's right.
He's a
Already
star.
astounding the rabbis. And so, Mary and Joseph find him there, and she behaves just like any parent would. She finds him, and the first thing out of her mouth, she doesn't speak to the rabbis, doesn't even really even acknowledge their presence. She goes right to her son, and she says, "Why have you done this to us? Don't you know we've been worried sick about you, right?" And he says famously, "Did you not know I must be about my father's business? I must be in my father's house. Did you know where to find me?"
Which is often the where the mystery ends in the
Yeah,
traditional telling.
yeah,
Look, how wise, he's in his father's house.
that's right.
There it is. But that's not the end of the mystery.
Yeah,
Because what really happens next is one of the most interesting things of all. Mary takes him away from the rabbis. She brings him out of the temple and she brings him home. And we're not going to hear from him again for another 20 years.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it.
Yeah.
He leaves with her, with his mother. And, I often hear people talk about, did Jesus go to India? Did he
Oh,
study
yeah.
Buddhism and go to Tibet? And, there are always these.
The Buddhists love that, by the way, because it privileges Buddhism over Christianity and
But the
Judaism.
other thing is, it also denies the fact that Jerusalem and this area, the
Yeah.
Middle East, was a hub. There were Buddhist centers in Alexandria
Yeah,
during Jesus's
yeah.
day. There were plenty of Buddhists
It's
right there in the Middle East.
it's a measure of the various books on these, some of which are interesting, or a measure of the ignorance of the ancient world. There were people constantly coming and going. There was a Buddhist monastery in Alexandria
Right.
during Jesus's day,
But what
so he
about,
didn't need to go anywhere to pick up
he
what
wasn't
was
going
in
to
the
study
air.
Buddhism. He was
Right.
going home with his mother.
That's right.
And this is really, I sometimes say, took one look at him. Who was it recently who said,
So I can't remember who it was.
I can't, Susie Verdi.
That's right. Was it
Susie,
Susie?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was Susie Verdi
I'm not sure it was
in a
Susie.
meeting
Somebody.
in a Way of the Rose Circle said she watches Jesus and she says he's not ready for prime time.
He said, this is one of our long-term projects. It's not quite ready for public view.
He is not ready. The rabbis think he's ready. I don't think he's ready.
Yeah.
Home.
Right. Well, the rabbis think he's ready, like the Tibetan lamas, think a child is ready. They basically want control over him, I think. And this is basically, I think, the right way to look at this. This is the moment when, Jesus has been recognized as an infant, right, by the seers, by the Tibetan lamas, the finders, as it were. Anna and Simeon recognized him even as an infant and recognized Mary for who she is. 12 years later, he shows up, and by all, rights, if Mary were to just completely submit to the patriarchy, she would leave him with these rabbis and they would train him like a Dalai Lama or something like that. She takes one look at them, and according to the Proto-Evangelium of James, some of the non-canonical writings about Mary and legends about her, she herself had been educated in the temple. She knows these people. She says, no way, I'm not leaving you with these guys.
And I think it's a really powerful moment. For me, one of the things I found really upsetting when I was involved in Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism was the way these lamas, their education, even including the Dalai Lama, was just they were sentimentalized. When in fact, what happened was that these children, very young children, sometimes as young as 3 or 4,
Yeah.
were taken away from their mothers and
Yeah.
brought to live in all male monasteries.
Yeah. If you ever want to see what that really looks like, there are a number of movies about it that show you the scenes of parting, and they're just heart-wrenching.
They're heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
They're absolutely heart-wrenching.
And I can tell you, having been the editor of a Buddhist magazine, okay, and the person who wrote a lot of the exposés about Tibetan Buddhism and what really goes on in these communities, the things that go on in Catholic boarding schools, believe me, the same
no
kinds
different.
of things are going on in these monasteries. So.
And Mary doesn't let that happen to Jesus. I see Carolyn Carson says she takes him away from institutional influence.
Yeah.
And that's it exactly. She gets him out of the temple.
He's taken home for 18 years to be homeschooled by the goddess.
That's it.
That's the way I imagine.
And the teachings he's going to bring forth are going to be teachings that are centered in the natural world. They are not centered in the teachings of Jerusalem and the city.
They take account of the teachings of Judaism, but Jesus' teachings, the teachings that he will offer when he comes back to the city and comes back to preach, are nature-based Jewish mystical teachings, such as would have been handed down prior to the rabbinical movement.
For me, this is a mystery. Here it is. It hinges before the sorrowful mysteries. It itself has elements of sorrow in it when Mary loses him.
It's a very ambiguous,
and can't find him.
Yeah, it's a very ambiguous mystery.
And it's almost, if you think of our species.
Yeah.
If you think of these mysteries, I sometimes think of the mysteries as following the story of Homo sapiens, of human beings.
Yeah.
This is the moment where we're just about to get into real trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a moment we're creating cities, we're creating temples, where we're beginning to settle down in, and but we're still connected to our mothers.
I want to come back to a point that we covered last week. You said something last week that sort of cracked open the joyful mysteries for me, and I saw something I'd never realized before. You talked about the fact that Mary is recognized by Simeon and Anna at the
Right.
presentation when she brings the child to Jesus, to for the purification and for his circumcision and all that. And she brings him, and Anna and Simeon see her and recognize her for who she is and address her, right? And then I realized, oh my gosh, if you think about it, the first four joyful mysteries are all about her being recognized. She's recognized by the angel Gabriel for who she is. She's recognized by Elizabeth and the visitation for who she is. At the Nativity, she's recognized by the shepherds and by the wise men for who she is. She's recognized by Simeon and Anna. She gets here, the rabbis have no idea who she is.
None.
They don't recognize her. They don't see her for who she is. All they see is the boy. All they see is Jesus. And from this moment on, in the narrative, Jesus becomes the focus, sort of divorced from the mother. Mary is there in the sorrowful mysteries, but she
Witness.
is a witness to this suffering, right? She is the sorrowful mother who embraces the body of Jesus and refuses to abandon him,
And what a
but does
moment this
not
is
intervene.
for
She's not
mothers.
able to intervene.
I mean, I think of mothers throughout history praying this mystery
Hmm.
who have this relationship with their sons, very intimate often,
Yeah,
very close. And then their sons step into the patriarchy
yeah,
and they lose them.
yeah,
And they lose this incredible relationship.
yeah,
And it is telling us about Mary finds him, but this is the moment where
yeah,
we are about to enter into the kind
yeah.
of real tragedy of
Yeah.
our species and
And
our
we talk
families.
about lost boys. We talk about the lost generation. We talk about all those young men that went off to war in World War One and didn't come back. They were lost because they were lost to patriarchal institutional authority, which sent them to their death, right? And these patriarchal institutions all vie with one another and fought with one another, and the casualties were these boys.
And we can see it again and again and again
And we see it in the
everywhere
sorrowful
we look.
mysteries.
We look, we see, and we feel it as mothers. I think there's so many mothers on Way of the Rose and parents and grandparents who I don't want to lose my child. I don't want to lose my child to this culture. I don't want to lose my child to a culture
Yeah.
of addiction. I don't want to lose my child to a culture of kind
Video
of
gaming.
needless money making. I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
lose my child from the kind of warmth and relationship
and
and natural
and
world.
and and lose your child into the false matrix of economic growth and gain. So
Yeah.
there is the natural matrix, which is the bottom up, which defines life from the bottom up, from the earth up, right? And instills the communal values that we associate with the divine feminine. And then there's this top down sort of blazing solar singularity of a culture that defines everything from above. These dominance hierarchies that sort of force people into molds and into grooves, and erodes their agency and their personal freedom and their right to joy.
And it doesn't just happen to men. I mean, one of the things,
Yeah,
whenever I
no,
look at the mysteries, one thing to do is to say,
yeah,
how am I all of these different characters? Just like you would read a
yeah.
dream. How can I be all these different people? And in what ways do I get lost at the temple? At what ways do I let
It's
myself?
easy to get lost in the temple.
It really is
It,
easy to become a
unless,
show off, to
yeah,
become.
if you don't claim your heart's desire, the default for claiming your heart's desire, right? If you don't do that in our culture, is that world,
We
right?
become lost in the
You
city.
become lost in the city.
And we become lost in the city to ourselves, to our mother, to our family, to this whole wonderful collective tribe
Yeah,
that we were part of,
yeah,
and become part of something
yeah.
else that's going to kind of celebrate us, but also ultimately destroy us.
Right. The wonderful I don't know, it's not pre-Raphaelite. I don't know what you call that art, but that painting that you
I posted,
posted,
yeah,
I
just
know it's
posted.
wonderful, and I always say that Mary, if you look at that painting, that I always say that Mary is like, I imagine a speech bubble above her head, saying, whispering in Jesus's ear, "You are so grounded," right? But the interesting thing is that, there's this devotion that we alluded to, the seven sorrows, the Rosary of the Seven Sorrows. Very interesting rosary. Instead of decades, it has seven Hail Marys. And instead of Our Father beads, it has medals that visually depict each of the scenes, each of the seven sorrows. There's something that it took me a long time to understand. The medal for the medal for the carrying the cross shows Jesus carrying the cross. The medal for the burial shows him being buried. But this medal for this mystery, right, for this sorrow, the loss in Jerusalem or the loss at the temple, if you look at that medal, it shows the finding, right? Which is strange because all of the other medals, show what's obviously sorrowful. And yet this medal, the image on all seven sorrows rosaries throughout the world, exactly the same. They show Mary and Joseph finding Jesus among the rabbis. And it took me a long time to realize that is the sorrow. The sorrow is the temple. The sorrow is the city. The sorrow is the way in which we trade our hearts and what is meaningful to be in our wisdom, and we subordinate it and sacrifice it. We sacrifice our joy on the altars of empire.
And also to take a third point of view, which is the rabbis themselves there in the temple, who are astounded at this young boy. In what way? But they don't recognize the mother. And that's it.
Yeah.
It's in a nutshell. Look at our culture is nothing but being astounded at adolescent boys. I mean, from Elon Musk to Bill Gates, these are adolescent boys.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Hey,
Mark, we're on Facebook.
But we are astounded by the adolescent boys and ignoring the wisdom of the mother.
Yeah.
Which is so easy to dismiss.
Well, it goes two ways in this mystery because, as I mentioned earlier, the rabbis don't recognize Mary, and Mary knows who they are. These are the most powerful people. This would be like, I'm trying to think of the equivalent. This would be like walking to a room full of U.S. senators or something. These are the ruling elite, right, of the whole nation of Israel at this point. And she walks into the room and she doesn't pay them any mind at all. She doesn't even address them or acknowledge their presence. She goes right to Jesus. The whole conversation is with him.
And she brings him home.
And at the end of it, it says, and he submitted to her will. She said, no, you're coming home.
How many mothers?
Yeah.
How many mothers? And I say this one because this one is so deep in my heart. Want to bring their children home from the culture.
Yeah.
Want to bring their children home. We've been telling mothers for a long time that they have to separate from their children. And this is one of the great violations of patriarchy, to separate mothers and their children. And, to separate mothers and daughters and pit them against each other.
It's kind of the basis for male initiation rituals in patriarchal cultures is the separation of boys from their mothers.
But you don't see it in matriarchal cultures.
Yeah.
What you see is the bonding together, the coming together. And there is no need for separation. What there's need for is weaving, the weaving together of community, the weaving together of tradition, the passing along of intimacy. How many parents right now are discovering, stuck at home with their kids, what a pleasure it is actually to finally have that kind of intimacy.
I don't think you should go there because there are probably a lot of parents.
There are a lot of people having. I mean, look.
If my son would only go to the temple for a few hours, I can catch my breath.
Our son is off hiking the mountain right now, and we're thrilled.
But
he's not in the temple.
He's not in the temple. He's on a mountaintop.
But I had to say, he went to a liberal arts college, and even I had to feel sometimes like, I'm going to have to rescue him from the temple every time he came home from school. I felt that way.
Yeah.
I would think about this mystery a lot. And I think about this mystery for our species. We get so lost. We think that the life of the city is the most important life.
Yeah. Now there are 18 years that elapse between the end of this mystery and the time we see Jesus again. And when we see him again, it's on the night with, the next mystery after this in the sequence is it goes right to the agony in the garden, which we'll talk about next week. But those 18 years are a mystery. We know that something profound happens to him because when he comes back, his teaching is going to be so deeply rooted in the wisdom of the divine feminine.
Completely.
His understanding of nature, his way of relating to other people. He's lost all of the traditional rabbinical phobia about menstrual blood and all that. He doesn't observe any of the purity laws or any of the
None.
laws separating him from women. He allows the little children to come up to him, women to touch him.
The
You
idea,
know,
the profound nature that Jesus let women touch him, that
yeah.
possibly could be menstruating, was absolutely
Yeah,
enormous,
and
and he
had
showed no concern.
he has there's one story in which a woman who has had a flow of blood for years, she's had some sort of disorder whereby she
Mm.
bleeds constantly, and she comes and she touches the hem of his garment and is instantly healed, and he feels the power, healing power go out of him, and he turns around and he says something so bizarre from the standpoint of a first century rabbi. He doesn't say, "Get away from me, you unclean hag." Really, I mean that's the that's what is most likely to have happened in a situation like that. He says, "Who touched me?" Right, and then he says, "Your faith has healed you," which is true. But
But
he
it's
isn't the least bit bothered by
and
that.
this is radical.
Yeah,
This is not the teaching of the rabbis at the temple. This is the teaching of his mother.
yeah,
And a mother who is an earth mother, who is from the country. Nazareth was and the Galilee were really out in the sticks.
yeah.
These were the yokels. These were not the refined, Hamptons or the
Yeah.
suburbs. This was out
Well,
there in the
these were the
sticks.
places where the old ways still lingered. You know.
And they and where there was still a lot of I must say, I'm quoting from our daughter's tremendous research and how much pagan worship was still going
Yeah,
on in these
still quite
communities
a
at the
lot.
time.
And there would have been areas where people would still have you know acknowledged the role of Asherah, Yahweh's wife and consort.
Hmm.
The Jewish goddess. They would have would have acknowledged her as real. Judaism had fought a millennia long war against Asherah and against the goddess. And at this point had nearly won it. But it's like pagan Europe under Christian rule. They couldn't monitor everyone everywhere all the time, and there were areas where it still survived.
And one question I ask myself when I'm praying the mysteries often is, so I've been praying about my joy, about conceiving my joy, bringing my joy into the world,
Hmm.
giving birth to my joy, being recognized for my joy. Where do I lose my joy?
Yeah,
How do I refine it? How do I
yeah,
take it back when I lose it? Because that's what's really going on here. And how do we lose our heart's desire? And of course, we lose our heart's desire in the temple.
yeah,
And that is what you see again and
yeah,
again and
yeah.
again.
This is a very richly symbolic mystery. For me, this is one of the most sort of dreamlike of the mysteries. I mean, think
Mm,
about the dreams you've had in your life of like being lost someplace, right? Or being lost in a
we're
city,
not being able to
or
find
walking
someone.
down a street looking for someone you've lost track of, or losing a child, losing a spouse, not being able to find them in a dream. It's sort of a primal panic. But this mystery is about losing and finding our joy,
And
and
how do we
about,
get it back?
yeah, and how do we keep it,
Yeah,
and
and where do we lose it?
how do
What are
we
the ways we
nurture it?
lose it? I
Yeah.
mean, I know for myself, how do I get caught up in some kind of external recognition by the
Oh
authorities in
boy.
charge? Let me tell you,
Yeah.
as writers, as professionals, it's really, really easy to want that and need that.
Our lady told us when the book was just about to come out. She said, you've been trained by the publishing industry, and you've been trained all your life to value top-down methods, right? And we had a lot of people who wanted to tell us, oh, you should hire this person or that person to, like, build your Instagram following and do all that, or to, and you should, go the traditional route of writing pieces for the New York Times, Washington Post, all of that. She says you can do that, and you're probably going to need to try to do that. But that's not how it's going to work. This is going to be bottom up. She said, I will show you how it's supposed to work. And it has.
And she has. She
One
took
person telling another. That's it, right? It's
a
just
very
you
different way.
guys talking to one another, sharing your experiences with one another. That's what's driven, this movement. That's why we're all here.
I want
It's
to
because of her.
address two of the questions. Denai says, do you think this was the moment he began to be prepared for his death?
Hmm.
I'm going to say no. I think it's the moment he began to be prepared for his life.
Yeah.
I don't think Mary brought Jesus home from the temple to prepare him to die. What mother wants to prepare her child to
Yeah.
die? I think
Yeah.
she brought him home to get him married. I think she
Yeah.
brought him home to teach him how to behave. I think she brought
And
him home
you know,
to
and
love
I
him.
think that this is the Achilles heel of Christian theology. Honestly, is that everything is interpreted in terms of Jesus's sacrifice. And you know, a perfect example is American conservative Christianity, and largely Protestant, but also Catholic Christianity, which interprets Christianity entirely in terms of uh, the salvic nature of Jesus's death and pays very little attention to his actual teachings, right?
And this is a teacher, if you
I
actually go
mean,
back and read the Gospels, who's really alive.
yeah,
He's alive. He loves women. He loves storytelling. He
loves
loves
good, loves
children.
food.
Loves
He's always
food.
eating.
He's funny.
Yeah,
People don't
yeah.
follow depressed sad boys. They just don't.
I don't know. Jordan Peterson has a lot of
Oh,
followers.
okay. Well, that people following, we don't even talk about. But here's the thing: it's what if Jesus's death isn't the point of the story? What if it's a mistake?
Yeah,
What if it's a mistake? If a child dies before a parent, it's a mistake. It's not the natural order of things. And that's what we'll begin to look at the sorrowful mysteries, because they are the sorrows in so many
mm,
ways of our misunderstanding of
mm.
civilization and empire. But
Penny Harrison said, "Where did you research all of this? I want more." Well, if you look at the footnotes
and our 40
of the Way
page
of the Rose, and there are about 40 pages of them in the bibliography,
40 pages of
and
bibliography.
40, there's a lot of back matter at the back of the book. And it's, we tried as much as possible. It really wasn't possible to write about, to give a footnote for everything in the book. The footnotes would have been as long as the book, which would be tiresome, as much as I would have
You
enjoyed
would
writing
would like nothing but a book of footnotes.
it.
But here's what I think. I think the thing is, where did the real place we research this, and this is where I want to end,
Yeah,
is the place you can research it, which is a conversation between Our Lady and the mystery.
yeah,
Go look at art and ask questions.
yeah,
The church would teach you not to ask questions. Ask questions.
yeah. Get
Ask
curious.
questions.
Follow your own
I don't.
curiosity, your own
Why?
impulses.
Why is it like this? How come he's wearing that? How come she says
Yeah.
that?
How
That's
come how come
funny.
they in the sorrowful mysteries, during in the crown of thorns, that central innermost mystery of the rosary, how come they put a scarlet robe around him? How come they give him a reed for a scepter?
Ask
How
questions of
come
the
there's a
mystery.
crown of thorns?
Ask questions of the mystery, because
Yeah.
that the church does not want you to ask questions of the mysteries, but the mystery wants you to ask
Yeah.
questions. The mystery is asking you to have play and have fun and imagine and intuit and think about how you would feel as a mother.
Yeah. And one more answer to that question, which is just very practical and very literal. If you want to know where the research for all of this came from and where we learned all this, all you have to do is take a deep dive into our Way of the Rose Facebook group, because this conversation between all of us, all of our members, many of whom have amazing backgrounds in art, symbology, lore, history, Catholic folk magic, all kinds of stuff. This conversation has been going on for years now, every day of the year.
And I must say, I learn about the mysteries every time I go to a phone meeting. And I'm telling everybody, go to a phone meeting, go to a
Yeah,
Zoom meeting,
yeah.
and listen to what people say about the mysteries. When Susie Verity said to me, Mary looks at Jesus and said, he's not done yet. It's like, I laugh. It's like, and I both,
Sure, it wasn't
was it?
Connor.
It was
I
Connor.
think it was
It was
Connor.
Connor.
Yeah, I think it was
Connor,
Connor.
that's
I can
who.
hear her voice saying that
Connor said,
because she's got a bit of a
and
drawl.
this is a mama with 20-year-old boys. She knows what she's talking about.
That's right.
You have insights about the mysteries I'm going to learn from.
Yeah, that's what we all.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, this the rosary is. We don't have any. We don't have any leaders, right, or anything. It's we just have spiritual friends, and we all learn from one another. And this is how we've learned everything.
And the Zoom meetings, what's really fun is everybody who's there takes a mystery and offers some thoughts about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I
Mm-hmm.
which I'm going to do in about 5 minutes. We have a phone meeting at 8 o'clock if anyone wants to join us. There's a Zoom meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock. These are all Eastern Standard Times.
Yeah,
And
you
it's-
can just go to the website. We've got a lot
We'll
of
try to
meetings going on
keep
now,
everything
and
updated.
anyone can start a meeting. So
Anyone can start a meeting
don't
who
need
likes to.
any-
We've got the
any-
script on the website.
Yeah,
Clark and I, if you start a meeting, we'll try to come to it at least once or twice. And
yeah,
we're trying these days to show up at as many meetings as we
yeah,
can.
yeah.
So thank you all so much. Next week we'll be here at 7:15, hopefully with no technical issues, and we'll be talking about
The agony in the garden.
sorrow for the next 5 weeks. But you know what? There's still riches there. Thanks so much.
All right, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.